Hey guys, it's Ted with HDpiano. Here's how to play the intro to I Want to Break Free by Queen. 2, 3, 4. Etc. So that leads into the verse. And as you could hear right there, we're actually going to learn to play the melody that Freddie Mercury sings in this song on the piano over the course of this lesson. In this first lesson section, though, we're just learning these instrumental introductions, so we don't have to worry about that melody. But this is a great lesson for you if you want to be able to play this song alone at the piano. You yourself are not a singer, you're not accompanying the singer, and you just want something that's satisfying to play purely on piano. Here's a great Queen song that you can play on piano. So let's start with this beginning introduction. And by the way, the rest of this lesson, all those other lesson sections where we're going to get into learning the melody, that's all at HDpiano.com. And there's some really fun things to learn in the song. There's the bridge where etc. There's some different chord changes in the bridge. There's also kind of a raging synth solo in this recording, and so I'm doing my best to translate that onto piano in one of the lesson sections. So anyway, all that's at hdpiano.com if you're not already there. But let's get into it on this introduction, and we start with these synth pads that you hear fading in on the recording. And the best we can do on the piano to get that kind of fade in is just to start very soft and get louder. And we have some pretty simple chords here. They're going to be satisfying to play. And we're actually going to get a preview of every single chord that we'll use throughout the whole song. All of them are present in this first 8-measure introduction. So the first chord is this F sharp sus4. The reason it's called sus is that it's a suspension. This B is suspended and then it falls down to the A sharp. And we get an F sharp major chord. And you can keep these fingers in place. And I like doing this with finger 1 and then crossing over finger 2 to get the resolution. Then we have A major, B major, both just in root position, octaves in the left hand, and then C sharp minor. At this point, maybe you can hazard a guess as to what key we're in. So think about it. If you're very theory-minded, maybe pause the video and test yourself. And then come back, and I'll let you know that we're in the key of E major. So all these chords really make sense in the key of E major, even though we haven't played an E major chord yet. But this is the 4 chord, 5 chord, 6 minor chord in the key of E major. And together with the 1 chord, that's the 4 chords of pop, as we call them at HDpiano. So we just left off here. Once we get to the C sharp minor chord, we're going to walk back down to the A. But this time we have an added note to the inversion, or the voicing in the right hand. Still in root position because we've got the A on the bottom, but we're adding another A on top. Same thing happens with the next 2 chords, B and C sharp minor again, all with the root added on top. Back down through B, and now we're continuing this rising melody by going to the next inversion of our A major chord. So we have C sharp on the bottom and the top now. And this is a voicing I really like in the right hand. This is a really nice big way to play a triad, a 3-note chord. You've got the 3 notes of the chord, but you're doubling the outside note at the octave. So from this A, we walk up again to B, but then the last chord finally is an E major chord, our home key. And, this is a synth on the recording, not a piano. But one way to get this kind of dramatic swell that's happening in the synth onto the piano is to do some sort of roll. So I did that in my left hand. And that's fun to play with. Maybe harder than it looks harder than it actually is. It might be tricky the first time you try it, but you just kind of add you play an octave, add a little bit of like stiffness to your hand. You want this frame to be firm, and then you're rotating in the wrist to create that back and forth roll. And that'll finish off the first part of the introduction. All those nice held out chords. Now we get into the second part of the introduction. So now we're starting to get this eighth note pulse that continues through most of the song. And this is all happening on synthesizers. We start on an E major chord. And there's a bunch of different synths layered, as far as I can tell, maybe some guitar too. So this was my best translation of the notes that we're hearing onto one piano voicing. We have E major in root position in our left hand, and then just the bottom two notes of that chord in our right hand. And we're playing this short eighth note pulse like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... So just play around with that and see if you can get that to feel good. By feel good, I just mean the rhythm. And you could play along with the recording too at this point, and really get a sense for how short those notes are supposed to be. When we say a note is going to be short or staccato, to use the classical music terminology, there's so many different staccatos. There's like really, really short. Probably making my keyboard bounce a lot doing that. And then there's not quite so short, which I think is where we're going to land in this piece. And then there's what's sometimes called a tenuto, like only a little bit of space between the notes. So there's a lot of range to play around with here, how you want them to sound. Okay, so part of this pattern is also that we alternate up to this other chord, F sharp minor, and then come back to the E. Here, to get the next chord, one way to think about it is that every single note is moving up to the next note in an E major scale. Here's our E major scale across 2 octaves. If I take all of these notes from the first chord and just move them up 1 note in the scale, it looks like that. And that's our F sharp minor chord. This is also the 1 major chord and the 2 minor chord for number system people. Okay, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's where we start. Now we transpose everything up to A. Exactly the same pattern, but in A. And that happens twice. Now, one thing to notice is that when we go to that alternating chord for the A pattern, we are no longer using the E major scale, because this D natural doesn't belong in the key of E major. What key does it belong in? A major. So it's not only that we're going from the E chord up to an A chord, it's kind of like we would say we're tonicizing A. Fancy word there, but tonic is the name for the root of whatever key you're in. And we're tonicizing A by making it sound like we're now in the key of A using the A major scale. Okay. So once you've done that for 2 measures on A, you go back to E, same pattern on E. And here, we're gonna try and grab this power chord that you hear in the guitar really loud against the B chord. So our right hand now is playing this shape, F sharp, B, D sharp for this B major chord. And then the same pattern, we're going up, just moving every note up by 1 note in the scale. And you can use the E major scale now to find those notes. And that's a C sharp minor chord. And then same pattern on the A. And these are all notes that we were using before, but your right hand has to grab an extra note from the left hand now, because the left hand's out. And finally back down. Ooh, not that, this, to our first pattern that we played on E. And that's it for the second part of the introduction. So let me play through the second part of the introduction with all these short notes. Just one more time so you can see how that chord progression fits together. 3 and 4 and. So twice on E, twice on A, twice on E. I missed that first right hand chord, but you get the idea. And already you might be noticing some resemblance to a classic chord progression, and that is a 12-bar blues chord progression. This was just, let's see, 10 measures here. We didn't have the entire 12-measure blues progression, but we're basically using those same chords, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. And as we move through the song, you'll see that that 12-bar blues chord progression is basically the template for most sections of the song. So I hope you join me for the rest of the song, those other lesson sections. And either way, it's been fun teaching you this first lesson section on the introduction. Okay, great job on part 1. If you're on HDpiano.com already, you can click on the next video. If you're not, head on over so you can keep going with this song. If there's another song you want to learn, send us your ideas at requests.hdpiano.com. You can follow us on social media for a heads up about new lessons. And if you're on YouTube, drop us a comment because we love hearing from you. I'm Ted with hdpiano.com. Until next time.